Hello, in this video we are going to discuss everything that we know about the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program, the US government's official program for studying UFOs. This secretive program was recently brought to the attention of the American public by a December 2017 New York Times article. This same article released two videos of UFOs recorded by US fighter jets. The man who ran that program, Luis Elizondo, resigned in protest as he did not like the government's secrecy regarding UFOs towards the public and wanted the subject to be seriously addressed by society. The revelation of this program directly contradicted the US government's official stance held since the 1960s, that UFOs do not exist. It is now clear that the government not only acknowledges the existence of UFOs, but is actively studying them. In the months following the revelation of this program, more information was released about some of the other programs associated with the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program. Even more curious than the existence of the program is the fact that it was disclosed to the public on multiple mainstream media outlets. So let's look deeper and see what exactly was the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program.
Tonight, CNN has learned the Pentagon had a secretive program to research UFOs like the one Fravor spotted. The project was called the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program, run by an official named Luis Elizondo.
I think this is a national security imperative. We have clear things that we do not understand how they work, operating in areas that we can't control.
Before we dive into the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program, let's take a look at the history of the US government's official stance on UFOs. Towards the end of World War II, Americans began reporting sightings of UFOs all over the country. A few of the more notable being the Battle of Los Angeles in 1942.
Anti-aircraft guns went into action against unidentified aircraft in the Los Angeles area shortly after 3 a.m. Pacific Wartime this morning. The anti-aircraft guns began barking during a blackout ordered by the 4th Interceptor Command at 2:25 a.m.
The Roswell UFO incident in 1947.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell.
And the Washington, D.C. UFO incident in 1952.
In Washington, ghost-like objects dart across the radar screen at the CAA Traffic Control Center at National Airport for several hours.
In response to the surge of UFO reports, the U.S. government, under the direction of the newly created Air Force, began 3 separate investigations into UFOs. The first of these investigations began in 1948 and was called Project Sign. The second was Project Grudge, beginning in 1949. And the investigations concluded with a project called Project Blue Book, which ran from 1949 to 1969. These investigations had 2 goals: to determine if UFOs were a threat to national security, and to scientifically analyze UFO data. Thousands of UFO reports were collected, analyzed, and filed. The data was later turned into the Condon Report in 1968, which concluded there was nothing anomalous about UFOs, and a review of the report of the National Academy of Sciences. Project Blue Book was terminated in December of 1969. The Air Force supplied the following summary of its investigation. 1. No UFO reported, investigated, and evaluated by the Air Force was ever an indication of threat to our national security. 2. There was no evidence submitted to or discovered by the Air Force that sightings categorized as unidentifiable represented technological developments or principles beyond the range of modern scientific knowledge. And 3. There was no evidence indicating that sightings categorized as unidentifiable were extraterrestrial vehicles.
Our critics continually charge that the United States Air Force is withholding information from the general public on this subject. This is absolutely untrue.
And there's nothing in the records which would indicate that we have been visited by any advanced civilization.
There's nothing to hide.
There's nothing to hide at all.
There are some holes to the Condon report, however, coming from one of the chief scientific consultants, J. Allen Hynek. J. Allen Hynek began as a debunker for the project, but soon realized that there was more to UFOs than prosaic phenomena. He stated that Project Blue Book often ignored credible UFO cases and would often rush to conclusions of weather balloons or swamp gas before true scientific scrutiny had been applied to these cases.
Because the CIA was not concerned so much with UFOs as they were with UFO reports. They were afraid, actually, that if another nation wanted to perpetrate another Pearl Harbor, that if their agents spawned a bunch of false flying saucer stories that might clog the military wires, as actually happened in 1952. So they devised the so-called Robertson panel, of which I was an associate member at the time. A very prestigious panel. I was one of the lower ranking ones. They had Nobel Prize winners and whatnot on it. But at any rate, they handed down the dictum, which then became sort of the unwritten law of the Air Force: don't rock the boat, play it down, cool it, don't get the public excited.
Well, what is your answer to the people who are sure there are spaceships and they say that you and the Air Force are in cahoots? Well, first of all, this business about being in cahoots is just simply a downright falsehood.
And I know, having been in Blue Book for nearly 20 years, that whenever an interesting case came up, the very last thing in the world they would do is to notify the media. And when the media themselves found out something, the Air Force did its best to play it down. It's called it a balloon, called it a star, called it
balloons, meteors, satellites, aircraft seen with the sun glinting off of them, and birds.
Captain Robert L. Salas, a nuclear missile officer who describes his 1967 UFO experience in my Robert Hastings video, claims that his UFO encounter, which was witnessed by multiple credible military personnel, was completely ignored by Project Blue Book and the Condon report.
I'd like to make a comment real quick. The Air Force has perpetrated a fraud, especially in our case. They claim in their statement about UFOs that no UFO incident has ever affected national security, and we lost 20 missiles during the Cold War. They also stonewalled the Condon Committee at that time. The Condon Committee had heard about our incident and were told to go away. They said they were told that no UFOs were involved. And then the Air Force turns around and uses the Condon Committee as a reason not to further investigate UFOs.
Even though there have been detractors from the investigation saying that they are not sufficient studies of the UFO phenomena, the U.S. government's official stance on the subject has remained consistent since the 1969 release of the Condon Report, that UFOs do not exist and can be explained by naturally occurring prosaic phenomena. In the mid-2000s, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid of Nevada began the process of forming what would eventually become the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program. Harry Reid has had a lifelong interest in the phenomena. This interest was invigorated in the 90s when Harry Reid talked to astronaut-turned-Ohio Senator John Glenn. John Glenn was a distinguished military pilot who flew combat missions in World War II and in the Korean War. John Glenn later went on to become an astronaut in the newly created NASA, and was the first American to orbit the Earth.
The Mercury Atlas stands alone, waiting to depart this Earth. 250,000 pounds of rocket, with thrust equal to 3.5 million horsepower. All to hurdle a 168-pound astronaut into space. Astronaut John Glenn of New Concord, Ohio, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Marine Corps.
John Glenn explained to Harry Reid not only his UFO encounters, but also those of his colleagues, both in the military and at NASA. He explained that for him and his colleagues, these events were real, but there were very limited options for reporting UFO encounters up the chain of command, and he wished there had been. In the mid-2000s, Harry Reid met in secret with Senator Ted Stevens of Arkansas and Senator Daniel Inouye of Hawaii to secure funding for an official Pentagon investigation into UFOs. Both Senator Stevens and Senator Inouye served as pilots in World War II and had their own interest in the UFO phenomena. Senator Stevens even claims that while in the Air Force, his plane had been tailed by a bright light for miles. The three men agreed to fund an official investigation of UFOs to the tune of $22 million through the Department of Defense. This funding was to be black budget, or not shown on the government's official budget. The program would be called the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program, with the goal of investigating anomalous reports of UFOs and creating a system in which military and government personnel could report their encounters up the chain of command. Billionaire Robert Bigelow was to obtain the contract from the government for the UFO investigations. Robert Bigelow made his fortunes as a real estate developer and also founder of Bigelow Aerospace. Robert Bigelow is also the largest personal financer of UFO research in history. He founded the National Institute for Discovery Science, NIDS, an organization which privately investigated UFOs and other paranormal phenomena. This organization also studied the infamous Skinwalker Ranch. It is believed that Bigelow was awarded the contract because his organization NIDS already had the most experience and the most infrastructure in place for dealing with these investigations. With the funding now secure and a home for the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program, it was time to begin investigating UFO reports. The program began under the direction of some unknown Department of Defense official, but soon was turned over to a man named Lou Elizondo. Lou Elizondo is a career intelligence officer whose experience includes working in the U.S. Army under General Mattis in the Second Iraq War, the Department of Defense, the National Counterintelligence Executive, and the Director of National Intelligence. As a former special agent in charge, Lou conducted and supervised highly sensitive espionage and terrorism investigations around the world. As an intelligence case officer, he ran clandestine source operations throughout Latin America and the Middle East. Under his direction, the program began to collect and record reported UFO reports through military and government channels. The cases that AATIP investigated often included evidence coming from multiple sources, including eyewitness testimony from trained observers such as fighter pilots, data from radar returns, and testimonies of air traffic controllers. According to Elizondo, AATIP investigated hundreds of UFO encounters. Two confirmed instances that AATIP investigated were the Nimitz UFO incident, which occurred off the coast of Baja California in 2004, and the Gimbal UFO incident, which occurred off the East Coast in 2015. These two incidents were reported to the American public in December of 2017, and official videos of the encounters were also released. These revelations disclosed that UFOs appeared as large Tic Tacs flying in the sky on the West Coast, on the East Coast, and in the Middle East. These UFOs often interfere with naval and Air Force operations. In the process of investigating hundreds of UFO reports, AATIP documented 5 observables that UFOs seem to display. The first observable is sudden and instantaneous acceleration. The second observable is hypersonic velocity. UFOs have been officially clocked at over 13,000 miles per hour. For context, the fastest plane ever made is the SR-71 Blackbird, which has been clocked at 5,000 miles per hour. The third observable is low observability. Eyewitnesses and radar returns do pick up these UFOs, but often they are blurry or fuzzy, which suggests some type of cloaking measure. The fourth observable is multi-medium travel. Human craft are designed differently if they are to perform underwater, in the air, or in space, as seen by the different designs of submarines, planes, and rockets. These UFOs are able to perform just as easily in atmosphere, in low Earth orbit, and even underwater. The last observable is positive lift, the ability to defy the natural effects of Earth's gravitational forces with no apparent means to generate lift. Human craft such as planes need wings to generate lift, or a hot air balloon can generate lift using heat. These UFOs have no visible wings and leave no heat signatures. Another function of AATIP was to not only document UFO encounters, but to see what technologies and sciences were being used by the UFOs, and to see if these technologies and sciences could be recreated by humans. Because of this, AATIP employed many studies with scientists across the country to do research related to how the UFOs operated. In January of 2019, the Defense Intelligence Agency responded to a Freedom of Information Act request and released a list of 38 research papers that AATIP was involved in. Many of them are still classified, but some are available online to read in full. The titles of the 38 research papers are as follows: Inertial Electrostatic Confinement Fusion, Advanced Nuclear Propulsion for Manned Deep Space Missions, Pulse High Power Microwave Technology, Space Access, Advanced Space Propulsion based on Vacuum Space-Time Metric Engineering, Biosensors and Bio-MEMs, Invisibility Cloaking, Traversable Wormholes, Stargates, and Negative Energy, High-Frequency Gravitational Wave Communications, Role of Superconductors in Gravity Research, Anti-Gravity for Aerospace Applications, Field Effects on Biological Tissues, Positron Aerospace Propulsion, Concepts for Extracting Energy from the Quantum Vacuum, An Introduction to Statistical Drake Equation, Maverick Inventor versus Corporate Inventor, Biomaterials, Metamaterials for Aerospace Applications, Warp Drive, Dark Energy, and the Manipulation of Extra Dimensions. Technological approaches to controlling external devices in the absence of limb-operated interfaces. Materials for advanced aerospace platforms. Metallic glasses. Aerospace applications of programmable matter. Metallic spintronics. Space communication implications of quantum entanglement and non-locality. Aneutronic fusion propulsion. Cockpits in the era of breakthrough flight. Cognitive limits on simultaneous control of multiple unmanned spacecraft. Detection and high-resolution tracking of vehicles at hypersonic velocities. Aneutronic fusion propulsion 2. Laser lightcraft nanosatellites. Magnetohydrodynamics. Quantum computing and utilizing organic molecules in automation technology. Quantum tomography of negative energy states in the vacuum. Ultracapacitors as energy and power storage devices. Negative mass propulsion. State-of-the-art and evolution of high-energy laser weapons. State-of-the-art and evolution of high-energy laser weapons 2. The Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program was officially said to have ended in 2012, but Lou Elizondo claims that the government continued studying UFOs and still does today. Lou Elizondo retired from the Department of Defense in 2017 in protest and went on to join the team at To the Stars Academy. To the Stars Academy is a company comprised of many high-ranking individuals from the government and academia that confirm that the UFO phenomena is real and are pushing for more discussion amongst governments and society regarding the subject. Dr. Hal Puthoff, one of the researchers that AATIP consulted, is also a part of this disclosure company. Sadly, Senator Ted Stevens passed away in 2010, and Senator Daniel Inouye passed away in 2012. Harry Reid retired from the Senate in 2017. Under Senate rules, Reid was prohibited from lobbying his former colleagues for 2 years. That time limit has now expired, and Harry Reid is calling for UFO hearings amongst his former colleagues in the Senate. What we can take away from the existence of the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program is that governments take UFOs seriously and study them despite previous claims of them not existing. What we can take away from the list of studies released by the Defense Intelligence Agency is that these UFOs seem to be displaying characteristics beyond our current scientific understanding of physics and propulsion. What we can take away from the disclosure of the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program and subsequent studies is that it seems governments want to be promoting broader discussion and acceptance of the UFO phenomena by society.